It's okay, I'll just join voice. Oh, we got the archery and another tank. We got the additional arrow one. Oh, another tank. Another tank? Perfect exalted orb. Another perfect exalted orb. Another perfect exalted orb. Another divine. Another divine. What the f— Hey guys, this is my rarity bot. It is 550% rarity, which is about average, but it comes with a couple key features that most other rarity bots don't have. Because I honestly wasn't aware that most rarity bots don't do this, but yeah. So the key features of this build that kind of stand out apart from other rarity bots is we're running 90% move speed, and I wasn't aware that a lot of rarity bot parties or group play parties don't actually run move speed so that they stick with each other. But if you want to be more of a generalist and be able to run with many different types of parties and different people who may or may not have the move speed, 90% is really nice just to have. Of course, we are capped reses. We are using Moira Invictus, so we do have a bit of armor evasion, though it doesn't really matter. We are MOM, so this mana pool is technically life pool. So we are running around with 8.1k EHP, but then that is further boosted by our Rite of Passage, Spirit of the Ox, which gives us 20% reduced damage taken. This effectively turns our EHP, while in PoB it goes up to 30k from 24k on elemental hits, and around 24k physical hits. So we are quite beefy despite our lower amounts of energy shield. If you wanted higher amounts of energy shield, you would run a rare body armor with 4 sockets instead of a Moira Invictus, but I opted not to do that. Instead, I'm just running the Spirit of the Ox for 20% reduced damage taken. Again, more EHP. And in our boots, we are obviously using movement speed boots, but if you want a survivability, you would socket in the energy shield sockets. And basically, you can do a lot of mix and matching here. Moira Invictus, you could also replace with the Greed body armor, the unique body armor that grants like 59% rarity just as an affix alone, and then you could put in 2 sockets of rarity. It is the highest amount of rarity on a body armor you could get, but it is the lowest survivability amongst all the options, so pick wisely. And yeah, that's pretty much it as far as differences go. You could click out of the video if you're not interested in, basically any more, but there are a couple other things I'd like to share. So if you're not familiar already with Frozen Mandibles, this is a haste aura granting specter that I'm using for the movement speed, but it also gives it to your entire party. It gives them skill speed as well, so it's nice. It's a DPS boost for them. Yeah, use it if you like. It does cost a ton of spirit though. As you can see, it eats up 47% of my spirit. So also like this, it's not actually 47% because of Diala's desire and as well as the quality. It doesn't show up on the actual gem itself for some reason. But yeah, I needed Diala's in order to make it work with Convalescence and Blasphemy, which I think are mandatory on the setup. But yeah. As for setup costs and gear, most of the setup costs in this build actually, it's like almost 100% in the rings. Basically every percentage point of increased rarity you have on the Unvarius is essentially like a couple of divs. So if you shaved off like 10% rarity, I bet you could shave off like 10 to 20 div, if not more, off these Unvariuses. Obviously you're a rarity bot, so your build scales off of this rarity, so you want as much of it as possible, but at the same time, I'm sure it's not a big deal whether you're running with 500% rarity or 450, or for me it's 550, and it's basically the reason why I didn't go any higher than 550 because I just didn't see the point. I'm sure the diminishing returns are so high at that point that there's almost no difference. And the group players who I know have been like group playing religiously, uh, they they run with a rarity bot that's I think with the hammer, the unique hammer that grants the rarity shrine would go up to around 667%. So it's not that big of a like deal, I think. Aside from that, I'm running a scepter instead of a hammer, mostly because I felt Like I didn't want to respec, but also I thought to myself about what I would prefer to have, and I think a scepter just makes more sense. Like generally speaking, you definitely do not need a scepter if you're running with strong party members, like really really strong party members. But if you were to have different teammates, if you were to mix and match your teammates, you would want a scepter because the effects that it gives you, for me at least, when I asked people who were attack damage carries, I boosted their tooltip DPS by around 30 to 40%, which is insane. So if you need the damage, I suggest you keep the scepter. Otherwise, move on to a hammer setup. I'll leave a POB of a hammer setup in the description. The hammer setup basically just gives you the shrine effects, so you could potentially get 100% rarity from it. That's what the reason why you would go a hammer over a scepter. But I go scepter for the comfortability. The type of scepter you run actually matters. Try to get a scepter that's like applicable to you. So for example, some people run omen scepters for the critical weakness. Some people run the protector scepter. I don't know the name exactly, but it gives you extra flat ES. I run a shrine scepter with purity of ice because I need cold resistance. So if you notice you are lacking resistances because the Anvarius set your resistances back by a ton, you want to be running one of the shrine scepters with either purity of fire, purity of ice, or purity of lightning, and it gives you 40% resistance. So I have capped cold res only because I have purity of cold here, or purity of ice. The rest is pretty standard. Alpha's Howl, obviously because of the presence radius is doubled. I just tried to get as much cold res as possible, as well as two sockets. The focus, basically just get as much res as possible, and then maybe you want faster start of energy shield recharge or increased energy shield recharge rate. This mana line should be the hybrid mana ES, but I bricked the craft, so this is what it looks like. On your amulet, obviously you want rarity, and then this should honestly be energy shield, but I just bought this amulet outright because I didn't feel like crafting one. This should be energy shield, then you want like flat energy shield and resistances. On your Anvariuses, again, this is like the major source. I spent 100 div each on these rings, so this is 94 and 95 respectively, and this one came with minus 17 to all elemental resistances as opposed to minus 20, so it helped out a lot as far as gearing up for res went, and a Kalandra's Touch just to make ring buying much simpler. The Moria Invictus, the three lines I went with were max mana per socket filled, increased global defenses per socket filled, and elemental resistances per socket filled. The mana one could be replaced for reduced damage on critical hits, but I opted for the mana instead. I feel like it's more generalist. And obviously, we're socketing the Rabbit Runes, 40% increased rarity of items found. They do work on the Moria Invictus now, in case anyone still thought that they were bugged. Previously, they would not trigger the socket effects, but now they do. The Gravebind Rope Cuffs, just again, as much cold res as you can get, and two sockets. These are super cheap, so just, Ingenuity, highest percents you can afford, and also make sure that you do not have increased charm charges used if you're using a rite of passage. If this goes over, if this is increased by any percent, you basically cannot trigger a rite of passage because rite of passages use 80 out of 80, so you need to be able to use 80 charges instead of like 81. So yeah, make sure to have reduced charm charges used, or at the bare minimum 0% charm charges used instead of increased charm charges used. And then for boots, I went over this previously, but I went for a movement speed setup. But if you wanted more survivability, you would take the ES Iron Runes in these sockets. They give me around like 300 to 400 energy shield each, but I really like having the movement speed. As for charms, Nascent Hope, Thawing Charm, Rite of Passage, this is pretty much permanently up. It's perma uptime in maps, and it basically gives you 20% EHP, as well as a couple other nice things like increased element threshold and reduced slowing potency of debuffs, since I don't get to run an Onslaught Charm, the slowing charm. And then another just golden charm. I don't know if these stack. I've been told they do, but I'm not sure. I can't really tell because I don't believe tooltip tells you when these charms give you any effects. But basically, just increase duration and chance to gain a charge when you kill or charge when you kill an enemy. If it does stack, then obviously more rarity is nice. But there's just also no other charm you want to put in here because you solve your ailment threshold and your stun threshold via your passives and some of your gear. And that's pretty much it as far as gear goes. I just use a mana flask just because I'm MOM. You know, you have no life, so a life flask doesn't do anything. And I'm MOM, so, you know, I've pretty much never used this, but if you need it, you have it, I guess. As for passive skills, we are a ritualist for the third ring, as well as equipped bonuses from rings and amulets. We want to take the reduced mana one because the other ones are significantly worse. We go the charm charges and charm slot area next, just because it's the only other one applicable to us. And then I take 3% extra movement speed. And our starting area, we are going the movement speed route into like blur, and then we path down this way, go into escape velocity for more movement speed, go down this way for this jewel socket and these movement speed nodes. You'll see that I have a Val Pact from nothing, which enables me to get momentum and light on your feet for movement speed. You might notice that this is allocated. This is due to my Megalomaniac. Not important, but I managed to get it with another relevant node on my Megalomaniac, but don't worry about this. Go up, we take this Howling Primate for presence area effect, and then in our jewels, we're running Grand Spectrum Sapphires to fix our resistances because our resistances are lower due to our Invariuses. In our rare jewels, we have presence area of effect, maximum energy shield, and if you were to be able to get this, I couldn't because I was on like a budget restraint after buying those rings. You would get ailment threshold per energy shield or stun threshold per energy shield, and then it would also be corrupted for resistances to make gearing easier, but that goes into, you know, really min-max territory. So I go down this way to shimmering for move speed while having energy shield, go this way for faster energy shield recharge and stun threshold while in full life, then step like mist for movement speed, and then mindful awareness for the energy shield. Then we go up, we are CI so that we don't have to worry about chaos res, another grand spectrum, patient barrier for the energy shield. We are taking energy shield nodes pretty much basically wherever we can get them. Whispers of Doom for the additional curse. We are running 2 curses in our blasphemy, another grand spectrum. Go down this way for the energy shield. I would go this way if I had the points for it. Maybe I could find a way to squeeze in these points, but as far as I know, I don't. Energy shield from equipped focus, MOM, Profane Commander for the 4% increased spirit and presence area of effect. Yeah. And I have Spiral into Depression, which gives you move speed and energy shield, and long distance relationship, which gives presence area of effect. I was looking for basically any combination of Spiral into Depression with something, or Warlord Leader with something, or Gem Enthusiast with something. Those were the combinations of Megalomaniacs I was looking at, and the only one I found that had like 2 that weren't absurdly expensive was Spiral into Depression and Long Distance Relationship. And as you can see, as I showed earlier, Warlord Leader, I have this anointed. Previously, I had Gem Enthusiast anointed, which is why you see I have the Gem Enthusiast like skill support setup, but I don't anymore for this Warlord Leader thing. It's because, well, I mean, it's choose your own adventure, right? Whether you want 5% more movement speed or you want to give your allies 40% damage and have 40% increased presence area of effect. By the way, I forgot to mention my presence area of effect is pretty much 2 screens. I think it's slightly more, but it's pretty much 2 screens. So we are not lacking presence area of effect at all. Now, finally, for skill support setup, do note that in any of the purities or the scepters that give these resistance auras, you can socket in support gems that use spirit and they won't cost any spirit. So as you can see, if I take it in, put it in, or take it out, it doesn't do anything to my spirit. And it is activated, so it's nice for putting in just like extra stuff like Clarity, cool-headed, warm-blooded, strong-hearted. It's just, extra thing to have. And then secondary, we have Blasphemy with Temporal Chains and Enfeeble. As you can see, the levels on these aren't maxed out because, again, I was running out of funds after buying those Anvariuses, so I never bothered leveling these up. And I question how much these actually do anything in party play because these get stripped down to like 6% each in party play. I noticed when looking at mobs. But basically, you run Heightened Curse, Magnified Area, and Ritualistic Curse for the increased effect as well as increased AoE. Then I would highly suggest running Convalescence instead of like Overwhelming Presence because if you need it, you will need it. When you're running group play, these mobs hit like a fucking truck. It's really scary, so you want to have the Get Out of Jail Free card. In it, you run Cooldown Recovery 2, Prolonged Duration 2, and Second Wind 3. Well, the number doesn't really matter on the second win, but basically you just want to have a Get Out of Jail Free card in case you ever get hit. And then finally, we have our Frozen Mandibles. The level doesn't matter as far as I know because it actually does nothing. And so long as you're running Brutish Brain, your companion can't die. So, yeah. Uh, Frozen Mandibles, Loyalty, Magnified Area. I'm not sure if this actually magnifies the area of your haste aura, but I don't know. Might as well because I have nothing else to put in here. Brutus Brain to make sure our companion doesn't die, and then Dialis Desire so that we're able to actually run it. If I take it off, you'll notice I can't afford to turn on my Frozen Mandibles, but put it in, I'm able to. Yeah, it sucks, but you kind of have to do it, no matter, despite how expensive a Dialis is. And then if you were to go Gem Enthusiast on your Annoyant or you were to have it somewhere else on your build, of course you need to run the Gem Enthusiast setup, which basically means you run a bunch of green gems and then a red and then blue gems for the mana. You don't run red gems because you don't have HP. So just a quick recap of what other players do that I don't. If you wanted to min-max the rarity to the max, you would run the unique hammer that allows you to get shrine effects. It basically lets you get like 100% rarity for like 20 seconds if you decided to wait for it or just like rip it. I don't feel like doing that. I don't feel like respecking, so I didn't bother. And also, as far as I know, a lot of party players do not bother to wait for the rarity shrine. How much it actually affects your party play doesn't, it's not that instrumental, I would think. Again, rare armor here or the greed unique armor instead of a Warrior Invictus. I think Warrior Invictus is the middle ground between rarity and then having defenses and whatnot. Yeah. The greed unique being obviously the worst defenses, the rare body armor with 4 sockets being the best defenses. And on our boots, ES nodes, like I told you, ES sockets instead of move speed sockets. As far as I know, that's about it. So for my overall thoughts about being a rarity bot and group play is that it's still insane. In fact, I'm sure it's more insane than ever due to the double juicing that you're able to do. And once that dries up, I'm sure it'll uh, become much more tame. But for now, while we do have double juicing, rarity bots and group play is very high in demand so long as there are still pre-juiced maps around, which I'm sure there are plenty of. So if you wanted to ever try being a rarity bot, I suggest you go and do it. I personally did it because I don't really have much else to do and I wanted to see what group play was like because I've never tried it before. I mean, honestly, I imagine the life cycle of a rarity bot is not very high because this isn't very engaging gameplay. Sure, you get a lot of dopamine from just watching a lot of drops fall on the ground. Uh, I'll make a separate video about the group play setup that dropped me around like 1 divine per minute. Obviously, like not accounting for the group split. But yeah, aside from the dopamine from watching just group play divines tink everywhere, playing this is kind of not very fun. Not only because you don't do anything, but it's also kind of stressful because these maps are hella hard and people drop like flies to like anything. So you're like kind of wasting juice here and there, and then you're stressed about your survivability on top of other people's survivability in order to max your juice. It's just It has its pros and cons. If you've never tried it, I suggest you try it just for the dopamine spike, but yeah, I'm definitely not going to be playing this again. I hope you found this video informative, and again, if you want to see what I would suggest for a party play setup, that'll be a separate video coming out soon. Thanks for watching.